Okay, looking at the time, I think we should get started. Anyone who's, any latecomers I can still admit as we roll. Just to let you know, we are recording this session, but don't worry, we're only recording the main speaker and the slides, so you are not part of the recording. So please keep your cameras on if you're comfortable. It's always nicer to see who's out there. For us, or for me at least. And if you have questions, please either write them in the chat as we go along or make notes, and we come to, at the end, we are doing a Q&A session. Okay, I'm still admitting. Q&A session in the end where we get back to your questions. So thank you everyone for joining us today and welcome. I'm here with Helen O'Neill and Danae Theodoridou. Danae is one of our coaches at Master Performing Public Space. Thank you for being here, Danae. And Helen is one of our graduates from 2020, and she will introduce her research project that she's worked on during the master program in the past today. I would like to ask you to mute yourself, otherwise I will do it for you. Just to avoid interruptions on the sound level. Thank you so much. My name is Ulla Havinger. I am part of this master since its kickoff in 2017, and I'm in charge for international recruitment, among other things. So we're doing those webinars on a regular basis now for many years, just to reach out to an international community. Not everyone can come to Tilburg, to the Netherlands, to meet us in person. So we've installed these online meetings to give you an introduction of our master program, and every time with a different focus area. Today it's artistic research, because that is a very important element in our master program. I will share a slideshow with you now. I hope everyone can see that. Yes, good. So this is what we're talking about today. I know some of you have been part of the previous webinar, so bear with me. I will repeat the first part, but for those, of course, who are here for the first time, this is relevant information for you. I will briefly introduce the Fontys Arts University. I will show you a drone video of our campus. Then I will briefly introduce our master program, mainly the structure and the setup. We'll show you a short bootcamp clip later. I hope that works. And then we're going over to I will give the floor to Danae Theodoridou, who will speak about artistic research and its importance in our master program. And then I will ask Helen to introduce her project. And then in the end, we come to the Q&A, and everyone will stick around for that. Good. Let's get started then. As mentioned, we're a part of a larger university cluster, the second largest university cluster in the Netherlands, called Fontys University. And we're the Arts Institute of this cluster, which means we house 15 arts programs under one roof, bachelor's and master programs, of which 8 of those programs are international programs. All those, they include all art disciplines under one roof, which makes it, of course, very diverse, interdisciplinary, and broad. And PPS, as I mentioned, has kicked off in 2017. So now we're in our 4th year, relatively young and niche master program focusing on arts and public space. This is where we're located in Europe, in the Netherlands, a bit over an hour south of Amsterdam, close to the Belgian border. Tilburg is a mid-size town, a university city in the Netherlands. And here I will try and share a drone video of our campus. Because you cannot be here. Maybe this gives you a better idea of where we're located. Our building, our campus is sits in the heart of Tilburg, in the city center. This is our entrance area. We're attached to the Theaters Tilburg building as well, the largest in the area. Here you fly through to the campus. And as I mentioned, we have, as I mentioned, all art disciplines are represented here. For example, the Music Academy, the Dance Academy. This is all in Dutch, but translating that for you, there's the Theater Academy, the Fine Arts Academy, the Art Communication and Design, the Rock Academy even. And this will be your base camp if you decide to study with us during the boot camps, and you will hear about those a little later, what those are. But here you will spend your time when coming to Tilburg. Here we have the libraries in there, the classrooms, the studio spaces. And this is quite convenient because it sits in the because we're in city center, so there's a lot of even new people coming in. Sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do, and nice and convenient in the city center. Anyways, going back to my screen. So I hope this gave you a bit of an idea. Now, briefly about our master program. Some of you probably saw the website and have a vague idea of what we're about and what we're doing, but maybe again, nice to give you a quick overview who we are, how we're set up. So who's the team? We have Helen de Hoon. She's the head of studies, and she has a background in theater and dramaturgy. Then, of course, Danae Theodoridou, who's here today, and David Limaverde from Brazil, but based in Amsterdam. They're the main coaches of the program. As you know, it's a one-year program, international program. It's full-time, although blended learning. I will get back to that in a moment. We're multidisciplinary, so we accept applications from artists with from various backgrounds and disciplines. It is a blended learning program, which represents a very individual setup. So the majority of the program happens online, and then we have the 3 times 2 weeks boot camps. Those are intensive weeks we do in Tilburg. The online part, you will get your coach assigned who will work with you one-on-one on your individual projects. And during that time, where you can basically be located wherever you want, you will have access to this online learning platform. And this is the platform where you will be in touch with your peers. You will receive your assignments during that time. There is a discussion forum. You will receive materials, etc. on here. And then on the other end are the boot camps. This is the time where we invite you to come to the Netherlands for 2 weeks each. Usually those are in October, January, and May. And this is really the time where you switch from working as an individual artist on your project to becoming part of a group, part of a community who will also work on co-creation projects. So there's a big shift in the program, temporary shift where you change your mode, your work mode. And here I wanted to show you a video. You can also find that on our website, but maybe, oops, one moment, where is it? but maybe for those who haven't seen it yet, interesting to show. That should give you a bit of an idea how things roll during the bootcamp. All right, so this hopefully gave you a bit of an idea how things roll during the bootcamp. Everyone comes together. It's really an interesting time where everyone gets to meet each other in person. We program a full-time on-site program. Of course, it's important to say that every bootcamp program is individually tailored to the class, to the needs of the class. And of course, the point in time when this bootcamp happens in the year and the needs in that during that time. But there are set modules that we embed during every bootcamp, which include artistic research workshops, mainly with Danae, public discourse, public space discourse, co-creation and interdisciplinary practices, network and entrepreneurship, artistic workshops, mainly with guest artists, local but also international guest artists that we invite to work with you, and of course theory lectures. At the core of this program really sits your individual project. That's the project you apply with. That's the project plan that you will submit. But of course, this project will transform over time because, of course, your individual coach, the peers, the theory that we offer, and our partners, our network will have impact on your individual project. And we definitely encourage that. So that's something that you will experience during this master, is that your project plan is a starting point, and of course, but there will be a transformation, which is very important, we think. If you're interested in seeing some of those or reading more about research projects that have been developed during our program, we have a project gallery online. There's the website below the image where you can go to. These are the graduation projects by our students from the last few years. So you can browse through that and you will see the diversity really of what's happening here. Good. So now let's move on to, this was really in a nutshell a very fast forward introduction, but you can always ask me questions afterwards. But now let's move on to Danae. And Danae will talk about artistic research and its importance in this master. But before she gets started, she would like to ask you a question. So I will start a poll, and I would like to ask you to share your answer. If I find the right window. One moment, please. Okay. Can you see the poll? Please read the question and give an answer. Is there a difference between artistic practice and artistic research for you? Half of you have voted, I can see. Okay. Anyone else? Oh yeah, they're still coming in, some votes. Okay, yes, nice. Thank you so much. So I will share the results, which is very clear.
Excellent.
That 82% say yes. Thank you, Danae. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ulla. Okay, that's a very good start to start my presentation and our discussion. The biggest struggle the artists that join us for the program have is to do this passage from artistic practice. They are artists, they have their artistic practice, to artistic research, and understand the difference between the two and the passage. And this, of course, has a very good reason. And this reason is that BA education, arts education in most countries does not include artistic research. So it's based mostly on a technical education, a technique, depending on your art discipline, of course, and otherwise on a more intuitive, inspirational, collaborative, different modes of creating art, but not artistic research, mostly. Yeah? This means that artists come on the MA level with a big gap there. Of course, I'm glad to recognize that you recognize the difference between artistic practice and artistic research, but I would like to ask you also, what is this difference? Because the second misunderstanding is, what do we have in mind? You said, yes, there is a difference, but what do you mean? What is this difference for you? I would like to hear you for a bit, and then I will continue with how we work with artistic research in the program. So, but I would like to hear some thoughts. What is this difference? You said there is a difference. What is this difference? And maybe because of the recording, in case you don't want to be shown, you turn off your camera before you speak. That's fine.
Do I just speak, or am I supposed to raise my hand?
No, you can speak.
Okay. Well, for me, I'd say, first of all, both overlap. But my first initial thought was like a difference between intake and output, which, yeah, again, can happen at the same time. But yeah, that's how I separate the two.
Okay, I'm not sure I get what you mean by input and outcome. So the one relates to input, the other relates to outcome? That's what
yes, I'm sorry. So artistic research for me would be intake, pretty much any way of coming near to something that's outside, or I guess also inside of me, like kind of a learning, intaking process, I guess. And
whereas artistic practice?
Sorry?
Whereas artistic practice?
Yes, and artistic practice would be more of an output of
the final result.
Yeah, but like reflecting out what I've taken in, and yeah, I don't think it needs to be a result. Like I said, they both overlap for me. like it could happen at the same time at some point or something.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Thoughts?
Hello. When you ask what are the differences, my first thought was it's a unit that I use the practice for the research, and the difference I had on my mind was that I'm using the practice for the research, so it would be the hierarchy and the relationships they have between each other. But as I see that, for me it's one big unit, and you cannot separate one or each other.
Yeah. Anyone else? And then maybe I continue, because time-wise we are. Okay, then maybe I continue. Thank you very much for sharing the thoughts. I would say that all artists have a practice. Yeah, there is also in the chat a thought. I think I can do artistic research about anything, even if I'm not interested in. Yes, yes, although you would have a hard time researching something you're not interested in. I think interest and motivation is the first thing in artistic research. But technically, yes, in the same line of thought, though, you could have an artistic artist also on something that is not interesting for you, but again, it would be weird. So yeah, let's say that in both we move from a very strong personal motivation. Otherwise, things are too demanding to work on them if we're not interested. But yes, every artist has an artistic practice, which is what you do, but not every artist is a researcher. And I said again that we are not trained as artists in our schools to be researchers. We are trained to have the technical skills of our discipline, and then see how we can turn our inspirations into indeed outcomes, artworks, in a different processes. But to pass from the practitioner, the art practitioner, to the art researcher, the distance is big. And that's what we work on with the students. And that's why I ask you, what do you mean that there is a difference? Because artists usually use the word artistic research. In the last years, it's also hype. It's used too much without really meaning the same thing, or without really sometimes knowing what they exactly talk about. For example, many artists, that's why I wanted to ask to hear from you, say that every artist does the research anyway. So when I'm about to do a work, I look for things, I look around, I read some things, I watch some things, I'm inspired by some things, and that's definitely the case. But this doesn't mean that this is artistic research. To look out for things that will inspire you is not artistic research, it's a very useful process. Artistic research it's a methodology, it's a systematic way to work, it's a particular way to produce art, and it's not the only way. Apparently, the program is a program of artistic research, so we do believe that this is the way to go, that this is the way that develops a work, a specific project, but also the work of an artist in general. But we are open to other suggestions as well. If you don't follow this type of methodology, if it's not something that suits you, you will have a problem in the program. So because you will, you will not be helped maybe, or I don't know, but it's something to think about, what this means and how much this is something that suits you. Let me start by saying that when we talk in this frame in our program about research, artistic research, we mean research in the arts and not on arts, because there are theoretical masters that look on arts and analyze it from a theoretical perspective, equally important. We do research in the arts, we work with artists, which this means that this artistic research is placed in the studio primarily. Of course, it's always assisted by theoretical research and by case studies that you look in the work of other artists that work on a similar topic to yours. But primarily, the question is, how do you develop methods in the studio, in public space in our program, to develop a research project? And these methods are not only one, they are several, and they relate specifically to your project. So every project has a need of different methods. because the needs are different. So the methods we use are coming from the other humanities, interviews, case studies, theoretical research, etc. But they are primarily also practice-based methods, which you develop in collaboration with your coach. This means that throughout the year, we are working on clarifying your topic, position it in a research area, look into the research questions that come with this topic, look into the methods that are relevant, create a very strong reflection space, because you have to reflect all the time. It's a constant process of questioning, systematic questioning, and setting the ground to work on these questions, and then questioning again. So you have to be able to move between this question and also the ability to take decisions and set the ground with concrete methods to proceed with your research interest. Usually, in order to, because artistic research in the arts is a quite new discipline, it has been discussed mostly since the 90s and the 2000s. So it's really, really young in relation to the research in other disciplines. Usually I ask our students to think, to compare, in order to understand what we are talking about, to compare it with the research that is done in other disciplines, where we immediately have an idea, although you work in the arts. But if I ask you what is research in medicine, for example, what is research in physics or biology, you immediately know what it is. Even, I guess, we should have a second poll actually, but we will not know. Or research in sociology, which is a more theoretical, it's a more humanities science, you immediately have an idea. And I guess the idea is the lab of doctors, the lab of sociologists, who set very, very strict and very, very concrete parameters in order to conduct very concrete experiments and have outcomes on them. And based on that outcome, they do the next experiment. This means that the frame is very, very particular. And if you don't define the parameters with this strictness, you cannot have research. And of course, at the same time, so they narrow down to something very specific that they look in a very specific way, and then they open up again and read the literature on this research, compare it to other, and that's why I say it's a constant in and out, and then they ask the next question from where the experiment stands. This is what we do also in the arts. The problem with us is that our discipline is not so easy to grasp, and that's where people start being confused. How do you make equally strict, how do you set equally strict parameters, equally strict methods in the lab, in our lab, which is a studio? In our case, also the public space and public sphere. This will be the struggle during the year. That's what we help you develop during the year. Maybe Helen will speak from within her project and you will be more helped. Now, how do we do that? As Ula mentioned, you have a coach that will assist you. So you have one person that will assist you from the start to the end, and you will meet weekly, on a weekly basis with them, to discuss and elaborate on the design of your lab, of the design of your project. So that's one way. With this coach, every week, you document, you report on your development, you discuss the new questions, you discuss the new experiments, etc., etc. So that's one way. Another way is that every time we meet for the 3 bootcamps, we do 2 sessions together on artistic research, where we reflect and reshape your project again based on the period of time. And when you come for the first time, we look at your title and the topic and the research question, so the start of the process. In the second one, we look at the methods. And in the third one, we look at the outcomes, because you're close to finishing. Now, apart from that, every week, the program gives you a written assignment, which means texts, theoretical texts that you have to read and reply to. 2 of these theoretical texts will relate to artistic research, and through them, we will ask you again to try to rethink and re-articulate your project. Actually, during the whole year, very often we will ask you to speak again and again about what it is that you do and about its design. Of course, this happens because the things develop, and not in order to say the same thing again and again, but to follow the development and continue your thought and your work. Apart from all that, I talked about the weekly assignments that relate to theory. We have other weekly assignments as well, which we call project assignments. So we have the theoretical assignments, which we call body of knowledge, BOKs, and we have the project assignments, which are the assignments where we ask you to resubmit the design of your project. You will do it in order to enter the program. You will hopefully be accepted with this. Then soon after a couple of months, we will ask you to rethink about it, because already you will have changes. And then in every period, the program is designed in 3 periods. In every period, we will ask you to do it again. Actually, to be more precise, we will ask you to do that in period 1 and in period 2. In period 3, we are going to ask you to report on it. And this is somehow, these reports they are lengthy reports, and they stand for the MA thesis. We will ask you to report on the theoretical development of your project, its framework, and where does it stand in research, especially because we talk about public space. You relate a lot to sociology, anthropology, theoretical discourse on public sphere, etc. So one is the theoretical report. The second is the artistic report, what happened with the artistic project and the artistic research. And the third is a personal report, where we will ask you to reflect on what happened with your personal development as an artist, citizen, whatever you want, person. And at the end of the year, also these artistic projects are presented in a showcase. I don't know if we'll mention some more things about it. We have a show at the end of the year where you can, if you want, together with other disciplines in the Arts Academy of Fontis, present your projects. And that's it in a nutshell, as Zula said. That's the way we work. And maybe, I finish here and we come back with the questions later.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Danae. Then let's move on to Helen. Thank you for being here, Helen. You graduated last year in 2020. Please take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, so I'll use my project as an example, hopefully to illustrate something of what Danae was just talking about. Let me just share my screen very briefly. Okay, so my background is as an interaction designer working in immersive theatre, mostly in London, but in other cities. And what really fascinates me is the interaction between people. I wanted to come onto this course to be able to talk about this at a higher level, in a more articulate way, being very precise about the concepts that I'm exploring through my work. One of the areas that I hadn't explored so much was digital space. So how can interaction design be taking place in the digital sphere? And part of this started off with what is my definition of public space, this being an exploration of public space on this course. And for me, public space is a product of interactions. And so using that framework for how I define public space, and then I tried to apply it to the most frequently used social media platforms to see what interactions are taking place there. Does it constitute public space? What is limiting them? How are they shaped by the platforms? And how can I find artistic protocols to kind of break down some of those functions for interaction and encourage different types of interaction to take place there? So these are some pages from one of my outputs, which was in the style of a 1980s computer manual for reasons I won't get into, but it was essentially to share some of the protocols that I devised through my experimental research processes, to share them with other people, to share my findings and my processes so that others could read them and come up with their own, or even try to replicate some of the experiments. So I went through a process of analysis. So first examining each platform I was looking at. This one was for Zoom, trying to figure out how it differs from physical space. and observing how people use it at the moment, and then trying to imagine how else they could use it in order to forge different sorts of interactions. So this led to experiments which resulted in protocols. So here you can see a couple of protocols for Zoom. And here you can see some documentation of the live experiments, what people did with the actual, as I was running these experiments. And I did these on different platforms, including WhatsApp. So some of the outputs were also poetry that was co-created, and also movies that were co-created on Instagram. So that should give you some idea of my process and what the outputs were. Obviously, a lot more goes into it, as Danae said, in terms of the essays, the theoretical research, and the group work that we do that also contributes and inspires what you do. But I think that's a good brief overview of my project, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. I will now briefly jump back to my slides to give you a bit of practical information, and then we'll go over to the Q&A. So I hope maybe you can use this time also to think of a few questions. In terms of practicalities, if you decide to apply to our master, the first step would be to register for application on studielink.nl. All this is on our website as well, but here a quick breakdown. So we have your basic details in our system. Then you will get sent an application form, which you will have to fill in. And then you send us an email with your CV, your motivation letter, a portfolio if you have one, and the project plan, which describes the project that the research project that you want to develop throughout the year. An important note, this year we have 2 scholarships. I heard last week about that. I'm very excited about this. 2 scholarships for non-EU applicants available. If you want to find out more about this, then please contact us directly and we will let you know what is needed for that, to apply for that. Important also to know that a bachelor degree or diploma is a basic requirement. If you do not have one, in some cases we can waiver that if you can show enough experience in this relevant field. Important deadlines. Actually, around the corner, the first early review deadline is February 28. This is a deadline you can use if you're not sure about your application, about your project plan. You can send us your plan or your application. We can look at it and we will give you 1 round of feedback to adjust things. And then the next, I'm sorry, there's a typo in there. The non-EU nationalities deadline is March 31st. That should be 31st, not March 3. The EU nationalities have until May 31st, but we do encourage to send in your application before that. This is really the last date. Good. Okay, then I think let's move on to the Q&A. So you've heard a lot in nutshells here. You've maybe read things on the website. Please shoot. This is the time you can ask us anything. So we have a graduate here, we have a coach, and we have myself. So who's got a question? You can just unmute yourself or raise a hand. Yes, Eline.
Yes, hello. I have a question. For me, it's clear about this artistic research and that you have your own project the whole year, but I was wondering, you work digital like the whole time, but do you also have online classes or whatever, or is it only you work on your own project?
Danae, do you want to take that one? Or
I'm not sure I get it. I don't understand if you ask something more than what Ula said, that we meet 3 times a year for 2 weeks in the Netherlands and we work together.
Yeah, but I mean online. If you're not on the bootcamp, you only work on your project, or do you also have online classes?
Yes, you work on your project mainly, and you do the weekly assignments. So you write, you have the practical work on your project, and you have the theoretical assignments we give you. Sometimes we have some other activities, but mainly the work is individual.
Thank you.
Maybe interesting to also share this, something that we've started last year and we're developing further. We do student alumni webinars throughout the year. This is an opportunity where, of course, we recognize that there's a lot of art disciplines, a lot of extended knowledge also within every group every year. So people come from different disciplines, have different even fields of expertise, even beyond their artistic practices, and these exchanges encourage that as well. So we ask our students to share their knowledge in form of a webinar with each other, and also we ask alumni to come on board and also present their projects or other interesting topics that they're working on. So that's not exactly a class, but it's knowledge exchange.
And another thing we do, especially since last year, is that we create different co-creation frames so students take up on a more of autonomous way. The truth is, things that they would do also together, and sometimes they are supervised partly by a coach, but that's on the side of the main part of the program, which is to develop your individual project and do the written assignments.
I hope that helped. Any other questions out there? For Danae, Helen?
Hello.
For me?
I was wondering, how detailed does the program plan have to be for the application? And is there any guidelines, like what it needs to contain?
Well, I can start answering this question. Maybe Danae can continue. In general, we don't have a set format. We don't ask the project plan to be in a certain format. We encourage, and that's deliberately. We want you to create it yourself. We can read a lot into that as well. The way you introduce your concept, your project. In terms of content, maybe Danae, you can speak about that. What needs to be in there?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's never developed enough, as you can imagine. It's an initial suggestion, and that's okay. But what we need to see is a very clear interest and idea, and also in relation to public space. So we have to understand why this program, because it is a particular program. And that's what we look for in the applications. If we see a clear idea, clear interest and motivation that relates also clearly to public space, then the specifics are developed on the way. I don't know if this replies.
Yeah, thank you.
And as I said, if you're unsure about your project plan, you can send it before February 28, and we can review that and give you feedback. Is there any other questions out there, please?
Will somebody asks in the chat to write the website for the project plans, the gallery?
Yes, I will do that.
I would have a very concrete question. I hope it's okay. I've been working in brownfields here in Czech. I was trying kind of set the research, and it's more that it will be public space in the future. The brownfields are really specific. So my question is if it's okay to work with a space like that, or should we should it be more like urban spaces?
No, not at all. It can be also rural spaces, and we had projects that focused on that. It's interesting. As you see, I wanted to also comment before on the fact that Helen presented her project, because it is a particular project. She was the first who decided to work in digital public space. So what do we mean with public space? That's why I said also it is important for us in the proposal to see your take, and you will be asked many times during the program to talk about your position in public space, because when we talk about public space, we mean from digital public space to urban public space to rural public space to public sphere that doesn't even take place in the place of in squares. So it relates to public space in the way of the public sphere. So it relates to politics, to assemblies, to, so as long as you can justify what is your interest and your personal position, we will take it.
Can I just say, like, as a practitioner who's interested in public space, one of the most interesting things for me was to see everyone else's different take on public space. And there wasn't a consensus. There were some beautiful attempts to try and show how our ideas of public space do relate to each other. But just seeing other people's perspectives on how they define and see public space was really exciting. So there was a broad range of definitions from the peer group.
And to add one more thing, of course, the fact that this is an international program, and yeah, that also, of course, also adds to the layers of how you define public space, what kind of spaces or spheres exist on our planet in different countries, different times, different cultures. And even, I mean, that as a basic setup is interesting, but also seeing some of the projects being transferred to different different countries and different public spaces, and even some of our students testing their ideas from, let's say, India in the Netherlands. What differences are there? What does that do to your practice? I think that's also one of the interesting things a lot of students point out, and valuable. Good. Any other questions? We still have 10 minutes to go. There's, I mean, of course, feel free if you're too shy to ask your questions, if you think they're too particular to your person or your project, you can send us an email anytime. You can reach out to me. I can even connect you to one of our coaches or alumni even. I can post the email address here in the chat one more time, but it's also on the website, of course. So feel free to reach out and discuss your ideas or your application, your situation with us, or even schedule another meeting online. Any other questions, or shall we wrap it up? It's always awkward. Silence. No? Okay, good.
Is it possible to work as two on one project?
Good question.
Helen tried to do that last year.
I did.
Not really. I mean, theoretically, we could say yes, but of course we have to give a master. We have to give a degree, and we have to be able to recognize who does what in the process. Maybe people can come with an interconnected project, but then it would have to be clear, you know, what work is done by whom and how. Yeah, it depends. I mean, we're open to receive suggestions. We would have to look into the specifics, and definitely there is a big part of the program that would have to be individual, like the writing assignments, etc. So in the project, we could check interconnections. if this is for some reason useful for you, but we would have to look into that. Helen came with a similar suggestion together with her collaborator, but eventually they went for 2 different projects. But on the broad basis, we're open to suggestions, and we will look into it. And we will look into the practicalities if both sides say, yes, this is something that makes sense. And it should happen this way, because there is a question, why? Why would you do that? If there are good reasons, then yes, we could look into it. But I think someone else was also ready to ask something. Or maybe it was mine.
Anyone else? Feel free to unmute yourself or type a question in the chat.
Okay, maybe one more.
Yes.
It is a full-time program, but is it possible if you have another work to do or to do a project beside the master? Is it possible?
Well, my general answer to that would be yes, it's a full-time master, so don't underestimate the time needed for this. So in general, we say about 20 hours for the general assignments and 20 hours reserved for your individual project. Of course, that being said, it really always depends on your work style, how efficient you work. The individual project side is, of course, more flexible, but then again, it really depends on the project, the efficiency, how things are flowing. But as far as I know, many of our students also have work. They also work alongside part-time, at least. Maybe Helen?
Yeah, I can comment on how I found that, because for me, looking at which course to study on, one of the key factors was how realistic this is for me to maintain my artistic practice, to keep it bubbling over, rather than taking a complete year away from project planning or collaborations or setting up or having overview over other projects that are going on at the same time. And I think that this is this course allowed me to continue my professional relationships with people and with the projects that are ongoing, because I was able to organize a lot of my time to balance that. So there's the 3 boot camps, which are extremely intense, and I absolutely could not fit anything more in my life in them apart from taking part in those boot camps, and the intensity of that is wonderful. But for the rest of the time, I also really appreciated that there were the essay assignments to get done, the written assignments, and my own personal experimentation to move my project forward, but that I could set my own timeframes for that and still keep tabs on what was currently going on in my other projects as well.
Thank you.
But it is true, and the master is designed in this way to give a lot of agency to you. That's why it addresses actually artists and people who live somewhere else. So this means that we will never have access really in your context. We are very interested in it and we look into it, but you will have to see how you will organize your space in relation to the demands of the master, which are demands of full time. So you have to see how you can work, where you can work, with whom, So this organizing of your project will have to be, of course, we always help. We have a network, we can help it in different ways, but it is a project that we assist you for your project, but you design your project.
Good. Okay. If there's no other pressing questions, then I would say let's wrap it up for today. It was really interesting to see and to meet you guys, and I hope you could take some new information out of this and learn more about us. And as I said, don't be a stranger. stay in touch, and we have one more of those webinars coming up, and when is it? Mid-March, I believe, on the focus topic student projects, sorry, meaning current student projects. So we will invite 2 of our current students to introduce their projects and also talk about how these projects developed and transformed over the year. This is, I think, interesting insights. Of course, yeah, those of you who decide to apply and have a non-EU nationality, and I know this sounds terrible, but this is really just administrative stuff. Non-EU nationalities just need to go through a little bit more paperwork. That's why the deadline is a bit sooner. Do reach out in advance so that we can get things rolling as soon as possible. Good. Then again, thank you so much for spending even more time in front of your screens on the weekend. It was nice to see you. Thank you, Danae. Thank you, Helen. And all the best. Be safe.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.